On September 16, 2023, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso decided to create a separate regional bloc different from the West African region bloc, ECOWAS. It was a move that stemmed from their commitment to national sovereignty and a desire for complete independence. Although the regional bloc, ECOWAS, has tried every means to bring back these three countries, the military leaders of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have made it clear that they would not relent on their decision. And, surprisingly, other countries in West Africa have begun to accept the AES Confederation. However, in the midst of all this, there are two African countries that seem to have a problem with the members of AES. And the Burkinabe military leader, President Traore, has refused to take it lightly with them. These countries are none other than Ghana and Ivory Coast. But what exactly is the issue? Why do the leaders of Ghana and Ivory Coast have a problem with AES members? And how has Traore reacted to it? Let's find out. On July 6, 2024, the leaders of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso met at the capital of Niger, Niamey, for the first summit of the Alliance of the Sahel state. This summit was a historic moment not just for the three countries but also for the West African region and the African continent as a whole. This is because, against all odds, the military leaders of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso were able to establish an organization that is free from Western influence and whose focus is solely on protecting the interest of its people. As you know, the AES was created by Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to pool their efforts to combat insecurity and promote socio-economic development in the Sahel region, which is considered the poorest region in Africa. Although rich in resources and has geographical importance because of its location, the region has not developed since independence because of exploitation by the West, particularly France in conjunction with greedy African leaders. However, the leaders of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have decided to create the AES to unite the people of the Sahel, fight insecurity, and promote development without the influence of the West. This is why all three countries have kicked out French forces and ended diplomatic relations with France, which has been its neo-colonial master for decades. During the first AES summit, the leaders of the three countries signed a charter formally establishing the Union of Sahel States. And as with other unions and blocs, following the recommendations of the draft, the leaders of the three countries established an investment bank and a stabilization fund for the union. President Assimi Goïta of Mali was appointed AES chairman for a one-year term and expressed his firm determination to transform the union into a model of regional cooperation, solidarity and development, and even sub-regional integration in accordance with the principles of the Liptako Convert Gourma Charter. Moreover, Niger President General Tiani stated during the meeting that the AES peoples irretrievably turned their backs on ECOWAS. He also called for the transformation of the bloc into an alternative to false regional organizations by creating a sovereign community of peoples that is not under the control of foreign powers. In his own words, "Today, it is up to us to make the AES Union an alternative to artificial regional groupings by building a community free from the control of foreign powers." Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. Now, the idea of forming a conference began after the coup in Niger and the threat of the regional bloc ECOWAS to use force to force the military to restore power to the ousted president. In a rare show of unity, the leaders of Mali and Burkina Faso pledged to support Niger's military authorities and vowed to go to war in the region if ECOWAS dared to invade Niger militarily. If we all remember, West Africa was in turmoil at the time because the threat of war was imminent. But ECOWAS left, and the threat of war ended. But unity grew between the three countries in mid-September, when leaders gathered to sign a defense agreement called the Liptako Gourma Charter. The region was named, and an alliance called the Alliance of Countries for the Sahel was formed. According to the charter, its aim is to prevent, control, and resolve armed insurrections or threats to territorial integrity and sovereignty, with emphasis on the use of peaceful means and mediation, and as necessary, the use of the power of Sahel states established not only to respond to external threats, but also to include the resources of these countries to fight acts of terrorism have affected the Sahel region for years. A defense pact makes sense because the three countries share many common characteristics. First, They are all former colonies that suffered from decades of French imperialism and neo-colonialism. Second, they are all led by soldiers. And finally, they face serious problems. The best part is that these three countries are moving in the same direction. Since coming to power, they have distanced themselves from France and the West, choosing to work primarily with non-Western countries. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have expelled French troops, and Niger has even expelled American troops. In addition, these countries are moving closer to Russia, which is considered an enemy of the West. However, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso do not share the Western perception of Russia as a true friend. Russia itself seems to be trying to be a friend to these countries and to show its support for their leaders. Russia has been providing weapons and trainers to these countries to help them overcome the years of instability in these countries. However, in addition to defense support, Russia also helps AES countries pursue nuclear weapons development. Between 2023 and 2024, Russia signed agreements with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to combat cross-border terrorism and strengthen nuclear security in the Sahel region. Now, given how obvious it is that the AES is an attempt by the leaders of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to fight for the sovereignty and independence of their countries, the question is, why do Ghana and Ivory Coast have problems with these countries, especially the leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore? It all started with the president of Ghana, Akufo-Addo. In December 2022, President Akufo-Addo of Ghana became the first and only African president to accuse Captain Ibrahim Traore of working with the Russian mercenary group Wagner. The president made this accusation at the 2022 US-Africa Summit, saying, "Burkina Faso, like Mali, reached an agreement to use Wagner forces. I believe that in return for their services, mines were allocated in southern Burkina Faso." To make the situation more sympathetic, President Akufo added that it was particularly disturbing that Russian mercenaries are on Ghana's northern border. However, apart from the statement, the president did not provide any evidence to support his claims, and to this day, no one knows why he made such an accusation against President Traore. Perhaps he wanted to show solidarity with the United States and other Western countries concerned about the growing Russian influence in African countries. Regardless of the reason, President Traore did not respond to his allegations at the time, and after the Ghanaian presidency sent a representative to Burkina Faso to clarify the issue, the situation calmed down and diplomatic relations between the two countries continued. However, in a recent interview with Alain Foka, President Traore used the opportunity to confront the Ghanaian president over the allegations against him. He strongly rejected the allegation that Burkina Faso was working with the Wagner group to fight the insurgency, saying that Akufo-Addo's statement was false and unfounded, meaning there is no evidence to back it up. In President Traore's own words, "Unfortunately, we have seen heads of state being fooled by this lie and spreading the lie that we handed over the southern mines to Russia. It's a lie." He added, "If the Russians want mines, we have the mining code. They come, they integrate, they get the license. They pay the taxes and everything they have to do, just like everyone else, so we don't give them anything." President Traore used the opportunity to express his commitment to Burkina Faso's sovereignty, declaring that if the agreement was to serve one master instead of another, we would rather die than do that, as they say, home or death. These are powerful statements from President Traore, and frankly, they are not surprising. Every time President Traore speaks, there is passion and truth in his words, and it is this passion and truth that makes him dear to many. It is great that President Traore has finally spoken out to clarify the issue of whether the Burkina Faso army is working with Wagner. This is because the media has continued to push the idea that Burkina Faso is working with Wagner as if it's a great sin. You see, every time there is news about Captain Traore in Burkina Faso, the Western media reports that the insecurity in Burkina Faso continues and that the army is working with the Wagner group, which is accused of human rights violations. Interestingly, even though there was no evidence, the media continued to spread this idea anyway. But this is not surprising, because Western countries, especially the United States, have used the media as a weapon many times to defeat politicians who disagree with them by publishing articles that paint them in a bad light and turn the people against them. And when the people disagree with such politicians, the United States steps in as a savior to remove them in the name of listening to the cries of the people. The same strategy was used against Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. Everyone knew that Gaddafi was eccentric, but he was a visionary politician who had a plan to build a united Africa with one currency, one government, and one army. Gaddafi was openly defiant towards the West and showed no fear towards it. In an attempt to easily remove Gaddafi, articles were published calling him a dictator, an authoritarian leader who oppresses his people. But how can a leader who is supposed to be a dictator raise the standard of living of his people to the highest level the country has ever seen? In fact, back in 2010, Libya was considered a highly developed country in the Middle East and North Africa. This status implies a literacy rate of 88.4%, a life expectancy of 74.5 years, gender equality, and several other positive indicators. The number of people living below the poverty line is less than in the Netherlands. So how could Gaddafi become a dictator? The facts were that there was no evidence to show this. All these articles were published just to justify why the US had to overthrow Gaddafi. Unfortunately, other African leaders who were supposed to support him did not, and he was killed. Today, Libya is in ruins with no hope of ever reaching the heights it reached under Muammar Gaddafi, so it was a wise and necessary move by Captain Ibrahim Traore to protect himself from these allegations. President Traore's words remove the fear that Russia is coming to replace France as another colonial master. Quite all right. Burkina Faso has shifted away from the traditional Western alliance, which has not benefited the country, and deepened relations with non-Western countries, notably Russia. However, that doesn't mean that he would wait back and allow Russia to take control. The interesting thing is, Russia may not even have any plan to take over any African country. The reason why there is such a fear is because Western countries are pushing the idea all over the media. The West, particularly the USA, wants to remain on top as a world power, but one country that is a threat to its ambition is Russia and currently China. As a result, the US wants to do everything it can to make sure the influence of these two countries does not surpass its own. This is the reason why they are always concerned about any African country dealing with Russia, because that would mean that Russia's influence is increasing. Now, even though the president of Ghana later apologized to President Traore regarding the false accusations, there is no doubt that Traore has recognized President Akufo-Addo for who he truly is. Just like some African leaders, the president of Ghana is a puppet of the West, particularly the US. If you recall, President Akufo once said that there would be no US military base in Ghana. However, some days after he made that statement, it was reported that the president had a backdoor meeting with some US military officials to set up a base in Ghana. It is obvious that someone like him cannot flow with President Traore, who is anti-West. But what about the Ivory Coast president? Well, if the president of Ghana is a puppet of the US, then the president of Ivory Coast is a puppet of France. This is something that President Traore has repeatedly made everyone aware of. A few months ago, President Traore accused Ivory Coast president of collaborating with France to destabilize Burkina Faso and the Sahel region. Speaking in front of the Palais des Sports in Ouagadougou, President Traore accused the imperialists of trying to plunder and destabilize France, Burkina Faso, and other West African countries. He said France had failed in its efforts to combat terrorism and had instead focused on destabilizing Burkina Faso. Specifically, he said he had evidence of destabilization in Burkina Faso engineered by France and supported by Benin and Côte d'Ivoire. He said, "We have nothing against the Ivorian people, but we have something against those who govern Côte d'Ivoire. We say it and we repeat it. In fact, there is an operational center in Abidjan aimed at destabilizing our country." Traore further expressed concern about the policies of Benin and Ivory Coast politicians, highlighting in particular that there are 2 French bases in Benin that target Burkina Faso. "No one will come to us and say that there are no French bases in Benin aimed at us. We have the evidence at hand," Traore said. According to Traore, these 2 French bases are used to train terrorists in Benin and are aimed at destabilizing Burkina Faso. He added that Burkina Faso has concrete evidence of the presence of a French base, including railway tracks and soldiers' equipment. He also said there were audio recordings of French agents collaborating in terrorist operations in Benin. "We will show you the physical evidence," he said. However, in a press release posted on social media, a Benin government spokesman was quick to dismiss Captain Traore's accusations, calling them disgusting disinformation that incites public discontent and threatens the peaceful coexistence of our people. He stressed that attackers from neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger were also involved in the majority of the foiled attacks in Benin. Interestingly, this is not the first time that Captain Traore has accused Côte d'Ivoire of harboring instability. As you may recall, relations between Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire have been tense recently. In one of his last interviews with the national television station RTB, President Traore expressed concern about the tensions in relations with neighboring countries, especially Côte d'Ivoire. He accused Côte d'Ivoire of harboring elements opposed to the regime and of failing to counter the terrorist threat that spills over the Ivorian border. During his April 26 broadcast, Captain Ibrahim Traore highlighted efforts to promote understanding with most of his neighbors, but singled out Côte d'Ivoire for a supposed lack of cooperation. "We need to get back to a better mood. All the destabilizing factors in Burkina Faso are there, and Ivorian officers are speaking ill of Burkina. There are problems that need to be dealt with honestly, without using deception," he explained, adding that, "At some point we have to stop hypocrisy and tell the truth. There is a problem with the authorities in this country." Indeed, as Traore has said, there is a problem with the authorities in Ivory Coast, particularly the president, Alassane Ouattara. He is a well-known French puppet, and it's no wonder that when countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have kicked out French forces from their countries, the president of Ivory Coast has shown no hint that he would ever do such. From this, you can understand why a country like Ivory Coast can never relate with members of the AES Confederation. Now, one thing that can be observed about Captain Traore and the other leaders of the AES, which distinguishes them from other African leaders, is that they value their country's sovereignty and independence above all else. This means that any threat to that sovereignty will be eliminated. It's the reason why they kicked France out and withdrew from the ECOWAS regional bloc. According to Ibrahim Traore, ECOWAS has deviated from the ideals of its founding fathers and has become a puppet for Western powers. He also added that ECOWAS has become a threat to its member countries, and for these reasons, our route is a path of no return. ECOWAS is over. It's also for the sake of sovereignty and independence that Burkina Faso is pulling resources together with Mali and Niger to form a confederation and eventually pull out from the CFA zone. President Traore and the leaders of the AES Confederation are truly commendable. These leaders have proven time and time again that they are completely different from all those civilian African leaders such as President Akufo-Addo, who are weak-willed and puppets of the West. They have proven that being a leader is not about whether they came through a coup or election. Rather, it's about your actions. Every African leader needs to learn from them. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.